Welcome into episode 227. Be sure you're following us on Twitter at Bailey J. Adams22, at by CA Simmons, at Night Sports Now, and at Pegasus Podcast. You can also email us at Pegasus Podcast by KSN at gmail.com. Wow, we have a lot to get through today.
We do.
We've got UCF space uniforms dropping. We'll start there. Then we've got things we missed and things we can clean up from UCF TCU, and then a bye week mailbag because it is a bye week. There is no game Saturday, and I honestly think I'm okay with it. I think we kind of needed it. I don't know. Maybe I needed it mentally after Saturday, but yeah, we'll get back to Saturday in a second. Let's talk about UCF space uniforms. Christian, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so if you're wondering where the Pegasus podcast was yesterday, because obviously we don't usually drop this late, we knew the space uniforms were coming and we were just waiting for them to drop. Definitely was not a complete coincidence, and we definitely were not shocked this morning when UCF just announced they were dropping them. That's
We were
definitely how it
blessed.
happened. Yeah, we got very lucky. I actually can't think of how upset I would have been if we recorded a pod last night and then the space uniforms dropped the next
You would
day.
have made me record a emergency podcast.
We would have done an emergency podcast. There's no way I would have just waited a week to talk about this. But
Right.
yeah, very early drop. I think this is the earliest drop ever for a space uniform. Usually it's been all over the place just depending on circumstances and all that. I think the shortest was, I think for the messed up 2020 season, I think they dropped 2 days before the game, 3 days before the game, something like that. Usually it's a couple weeks. This is a big one, and UCF has since announced that they're going to be in the EA college football game starting in October. So fans are going to get to play with these for a whole month before we see them on the field, which is pretty cool.
It feels like that's why, right? They needed to get out in front of it before EA released them.
I don't know the reason. It could also be that it's a bye week and there is not another bye week until after the space game. So it could also just be this is the last time there. It also could just be fan vibes are high right now. And we learned when they dropped the all blue unis last year in the middle of the losing streak and fans just hated them. And then UCF won in them and everyone was like, actually, I think they might have been the best ones ever. I think UCF just learned to drop the uniforms when vibes are high because the reaction will be better.
It was to the point for me where you sent me. Well, actually, I don't even know if I was out of bed yet. Maybe I was, but I didn't even see your text yet. Scott, my boss at Pewter Report, sent me and no context just said, "Bailey, today's a pretty big day for you, isn't it?" And I said, "Why is that?" Because like I hadn't even checked Twitter. I go, "Why is that?" Like I was like, "What is he thinking of?" And then he sent the UCF. They tweeted space uniforms. It said, "Good morning, space uniforms drop at 3:21." And in my mind, I was like, why? I was like, it's September. Like, it seems very early for that, but okay. So yeah, I didn't, it caught me off guard completely.
Yeah, but we
They,
can.
they look good.
They do look good. I've had, and I never would have said this publicly because it would go against everything I stand for, but I've been worried about the space uniforms for a few months now. And the reasoning has just been me getting in my own head because this is year 8, man. This is gonna be the 8th space game. It's gonna be the 7th full uniform that UCF's designed. And I don't think I'm speaking out of turn. I know that like my whole thing is, he always loves the uniforms, but I don't think I'm speaking out of turn to say that there hasn't been a miss in the through the first 7 years of this. There have been some that fans have been liked more than others, but it's always been a pretty healthy debate. And I even saw that today because I posted in anticipation of this. I was like, oh, rank your space uniforms. Just tell me what are your favorites. And you scroll through the replies and all of them get mentioned. Like fans are just they've all been such strong uniforms. There's never been one that fans have just not reacted to or been like, oh, I don't like this. It's just been this crazy freaking run. I don't know if you just follow UCF and not college football as a whole, that's not easy. It's difficult enough to design uniforms from scratch every year. That's why the vast majority of teams don't mess with that. And even the ones that do, it's rare for them to not have a dud somewhere. And I just kind of got this sneaking feeling of I was just like, they can't keep this up. Like there's no way, like it's been too many years. There's no way they're gonna somehow just keep dropping cool uniforms. And then they went and dropped a really freaking cool uniform. I would say that this one maybe isn't as like fireworks in your face, something crazy is maybe like the moon helmet, or I think the all blue one kind of hit that last year just because it was so shocking because I don't think fans felt they would do that. It's just a freaking cool uniform. I mean the detail that I'm sure if you're listening to this you've seen it, but it's a black helmet, a black jersey, and I think pewter pants that looks like pewter. I think we're calling them moon dust pants, but it's looking like pewter.
Yeah.
So I guess whenever they designed this, they were able to keep Terry Mahadra out of the room long enough to send the designs to Nike. I think the big detail that stands out the most is there's like a moon dust splatter across the black jersey, across the bottom of it. I thought it was going to be a gradient at first. It's not a gradient. It literally looks like if a lunar module or something were to land on the moon and the dust it stirred up is what you see on the bottom of the uniform. And I'm not a gradient guy at all. I hate gradients, and that's why I was afraid that's what it was going to be. It's really not that. Because my issue that I've always had with gradients when teams like I think the Falcons used to do it, just have a straight up their jersey face or the color of the pants, is what that starts to look like is if you're just watching on TV, it looks like the team hiked up their pants to like their chest, and it
Yeah.
just does not look good. This doesn't look like that.
I'm
That
sorry, I didn't want to
Go ahead.
interrupt,
No,
but
go ahead.
I'm just now noticing that there's some of the like the moon dust, is that's what we're calling it, on like the shoulders too,
Yeah, it
like
goes all the
all the
way up
way
the
up as
jersey.
far as like the armpit. I didn't even notice that earlier. I thought it was just kind of more, to the bottom. But yeah, that's okay. That's
It's in the UCF decal as well. On the black helmet, they've
mhm.
got the white UCF decal, some Canaveral blue in there, and there's specks of moon dust across that as well. I don't know. I know that like fans have to understand that like uniforms are not just Photoshop. You don't just like decide what you want to do and then it happens. I don't know how UCF got that done. There's a reason you don't see a lot of designs like that on uniforms because it's not easy to pull off. And that's a really, really cool touch. It's another strong, good looking uniform, man. I just, it's kind of funny because we're 8 years in now, seven as far as them designing full uniforms. And this is going to be the third one that's black. And I had kind of ruled out black as an option because they did black in 2022. And what I'm realizing part of
Mhm.
it is you want to see diversity, and I'm sure they won't do black again next year. But it's just when you're doing a space uniform, it's kind of they must have to show so much restraint to not just do black every year because it looks so cool. And the colors they've chosen as the secondaries, the gray, the white, the Canaveral blue, which is obviously not featured as prominently as last year, but it's still in there, just
Mhm.
looks so electric when paired with black.
Yeah.
And it's just like that retro fade blue on the numbers, man, is just that nice little bit of shine you get in there. It's hard to not do black as the base. It really is because it just creates some spacey looking space looks, you know?
And that's part of what I love so much about the helmet is there's like, yeah, there's the dust in the helmet, but there's that like I don't even know what you call that, if that's even really the outline or if it's more just kind of like streaks of the Canaveral blue inside the stack UCF. I really
Yeah,
love that. And I know like the back bumper is like I think that was Canaveral blue too, wasn't it? And all the whatever stickers, decals on the back are all, that extra touch of blue. And yeah, I like the helmet. I think I like the helmet the most. But the jersey, yeah, the jerseys are pretty cool. With the entire ensemble of all of it, I do like the jersey a lot.
I'm looking at they sent out a Dropbox of some of the photos to the media. I'm looking at how the moon dust is up the sides of the jersey too. Like it's like
Yeah.
I don't know if this is gonna work. I always don't know how
Oh, I
showing
don't know.
photos on it, but like you can see it goes up the
Yeah,
side like
actually,
that too.
okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
they're
That
pretty cool.
showed up
And
way better than I thought it would.
yeah, it actually was well done. And we're pretty. Oh man, these photos. I haven't gone through this Dropbox yet, so you're about to lose me.
That's
We
good.
actually got fairly far into talking about these before we said what the theme is. They're Artemis themed. If you're not a space watcher, space follower, I don't know, just aware of the world,
Which is me, basically.
NASA's planning to go back to the moon for the first time since the Apollo missions of the 60s and 70s, and those are the Artemis missions. And I don't know this, but what's unfortunate is that the Artemis 2, which was going to go to the moon, was supposed to launch in November, the month of the space game, which would have been incredibly cool. And it was pushed back to 2025 in January. I'm wondering if UCF had been deep in the design process before they knew that was going to happen, because obviously that would have been too perfect, the Artemis uniforms,
Hmm.
the same month they, but still, that is the next far and away the next big space thing that's happening. So you absolutely can pull it off. But they have some really nice touches to Artemis built into this as well. The patch is based off of that. I think this is one of the things you talked about. You and I disagree on because I think I'm a big fan of it, but you said you're not so much. The side paneling of the pants is the design of the Artemis booster rockets, which is a pretty cool touch. Kind of ties it all together.
Yeah, I think like what I told you before we got on the podcast, which we probably did a worse job of this than we've done in a while as far as not discussing our thoughts before the podcast.
Let me say really
Um,
quickly, entirely on me. Bailey said, "Stop talking to me about this," and I said, "Got it," and then just continued talking about the uniform.
we said I said let's stop, and I said okay, we're not texting anymore, and then we got on to record, and before we hit record, it was just let's talk more about it. And what I told you was I like that. I mean, I like the idea behind it. I like that it ties in with the story. I like that it ties in with the theme. I just don't think it like looks particularly cool. Like it's just kind of like without knowing like the reasoning behind it, I saw it and was like, those look like squiggly lines. And I knew there was gonna be a story to it, but I just wonder if like people will see that and be like, what is on the pants? But it's a small detail that I'm like, I'm not the biggest fan, but I do. I mean, like looking at this, like 'cause I'm looking at it again, and then like right next to that is the back bumper of the helmet with all of the Big 12 logo with the number and all that outlined in Canaveral blue, and I love that.
I got another. Sorry, I'm just going through the Dropbox stuff still. We got that's a good look at it
Yeah,
too. Um,
yeah.
I like this is I also like kind of and the moon dust obviously on the jersey plays into it too. But I like that this is the first other than the original space jersey that was just a decal, obviously not space jersey, space game, excuse me. This is the first heavily black one that's not a blackout though. You've got the moon dust going through the jersey, and then you've got the pewter pants, and it is a cool
Yeah.
look. This sort of black silver look. It's a good uniform, man. I'm just happy because I think that, and I try to not, because I understand that for a lot of you, my reputation is just he always likes uniforms, so we don't care what he has to say, and it's largely true. I do like, especially the space uniforms. I like them all. I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you. I just hope that fans appreciate this is an unbelievable run of success. I don't understand how we are coming up on a decade of this, and UCF can still drop a uniform that has all the college football world going whoa when they see it. It's just not easy, and it's also hard to toe the line because I'm sure if you're UCF, you grapple with a few things. I think you grapple with how do we keep coming up with unique themes, because the one thing they've always avoided is they've never dropped a uniform that was just like, here's a space uniform, and there's not some deeper meaning behind most of the details in that uniform. That's a challenge they set for themselves, and I think it's incredible because a lot of teams don't do that. That's one challenge they deal with. I think another is how do you toe the line between not playing it so safe that it's boring, but also not doing something so extreme that it just is gaudy or kind of a joke. I'm thinking like Florida Gator skin uniforms. And honestly, this moon dust thing, they could have gone too far with that. They could have made it a straight up gradient. They could have had it so all over the uniform it just kind of washes out. Like they towed that line well. And it's just the fact that they've somehow managed to keep all of that in line and keep cranking out 8 uniforms, 7 uniforms, and 1 decal that all feel like their own thing. Like this feels like its own uniform. It's not like we've ever felt like, they're kind of rehashing this or they're just kind of doing the same thing. It's just, that's tough. And I don't know how they've continued to do it.
Which is funny because like when you look at it, it's like, yeah, like the shoulder design, the constellations look like they did in 2018. Like the number, like some of the stuff, like it has elements of stuff we've not necessarily seen exactly before, but some stuff that kind of like almost, and I don't know if this was the goal or not. And I read through it. I don't think they really mentioned it, but like it almost pays homage to previous space uniforms in a couple ways. But yeah, right. I mean, it's unique. It's just one of those things, like we talk about it every year, I think, with UCF, where it's like UCF has such a unique space. It was not supposed to be a pun, but like within all of this, like they're just in a cool spot where they can keep doing these things as a university that's like a football program and university that's still young, but has the space history to draw back on. Like it's a really cool thing. And I know people, there's always like the running joke of like, oh, which school claims to be Space U? No one was trying to do it, but until UCF started making these uniforms. And that's what I think no one ever really no one other than UCF fans ever actually kind of says that and is like, it's a fact. There was not a space uniform or a college football space race, quote unquote, until UCF started doing this. And I think that's where it's like almost one of those things that we take pride in.
We got 147 years into college football before someone dropped a space-themed uniform. UCF dropped a space-themed uniform in 2017. In the 7 years since, Purdue has dropped a space uniform, Air Force has dropped a space uniform, Navy has dropped a space uniform, Rice has dropped a space uniform. I think I'm forgetting someone. Someone else did it too.
Probably.
So and multiple, not just fans, but like actual officials from these schools have said, no, we came up with this on our own. Okay, why didn't you come up with that in the first 147 years of college football history if that's true? And I don't care. Honestly, part of the reason because the Purdue one really bothered me back in the day. And part of the reason I've learned not to care is because they drop those uniforms and they just come and go. Could you tell me what Navy's looked like right now? No. But then UCF, they're so insane and so memorable that not just UCF fans, but college football as a whole remembers them. And that's been backed up in how they've won Uniswag Uniform of the Year or Helmet of the Year more often than not, which is a national award. I mean, it's so it's kind of like if someone took it seriously and really started like trying to make a uniform that wasn't forgettable, then I'd be more worried about it. But just no one, it's not just the UCF invented, it's that still no one can touch them at this.
Right. And I think part of it for me is like with a lot of these other schools, like I understand their ties to space, their reasonings behind it. And I'm not going to dispute any of them, but it is the fact that UCF started doing it. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, wait, we can do this. And
I will dispute some of them. I will dispute some
like, oh, okay. I thought you were going to do them like all now.
I could break. Like I said, I think my favorite is still Purdue because Purdue's big claim is they're like a lot of astronauts went to our school, and that makes a Space U. And it's like, okay, so we have some people graduate who became astronauts versus UCF that was actually called Space University and was founded with the specific mission to support the space program, which it has gone on to do. I actually wanted to bring up that because one of my first questions when I see the very cool reveal video and all the reveal photos is they've got the guy in the uniform stamping around in moon dust. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then I paused and I'm like, Where the hell did UCF get moon dust? Like, it's like, I don't know where I'd go to get that. It's not go to Home Depot and be like, do you have any of that stuff from the moon? And it turns out the answer was Exolith Lab at UCF, which makes moon powder and materials that you'd find on other planets. They actually manufacture the stuff so that space companies like SpaceX or NASA and all that can test how their rovers will work on the surface of the moon, or how they would go about trying to grow plants on the surface of other planets. And that's just at UCF. I mean, it's like, it's things like that where it's like Space U isn't just a name that UCF came up with because they're like, we want to make uniforms. They live and breathe it every day on campus.
Yeah. Side note, people are smart, man. Like, just being able to do that, like, oh yeah, we'll just come up with this and manufacture this material and this powder that will actually accurately help companies test out their stuff for space. Like,
because
that's crazy.
A thing I've never considered. I like, in my head, I think whenever I saw like them design a rover for Mars, I was like, yeah, I guess they just hoped that the tires made sense when it got to the planet. I never considered that they might have to like test if it would work. But yeah, I will say for all the other schools that want to get involved, it's funny because the one school that has that the only other school that has a legitimate, powerful claim to space like UCF is the only one that hasn't really done anything with it yet. It's Houston. I couldn't argue with Houston if they tried to get involved there, and they for some reason have not. I think they could have. I mean, there was all the stuff where it's always like, oh, they're going to start a space rivalry. Like, you know, Houston could,
and they
if
just
they
named
wanted to.
was their new stadium, or not new stadium, but their stadium's now called like Space City something. Yep.
Yes.
This came out this week. I don't know what that was all about.
They went from TDECU Stadium to Space City Stadium, and I want to say the reasoning behind that is TDECU is a credit union that changed its name to Space City Credit Union. So it's not like Houston.
No, I didn't even know that.
It's not like Houston was dipping their toe into the space wars. It's just their existing sponsor changed their name. But then we've got, you know, other schools that are just like, an astronaut went here 30 years ago, so we think we're a space school too. It's like, okay. I think Rice's, if I remember right, Rice's space uniforms were literally just like, we're in Houston.
Right.
That was it.
Well, because Houston is known as Space City, right?
Houston, yeah, because NASA's based in Houston. Yeah, but either way, these are pretty cool uniforms, man. I'm excited to see them. I have a little worry with them. I have two little worries with them. The first one is that if UCF loses to Arizona, fans will hate them with a fiery passion. We know that's coming. And my other worry that I'm a little curious about is I'm very excited to get them in the game. I wonder if they will not be as impactful on the field if fans have been playing with them for a month before that happens. I'll be a little curious how that goes.
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think it'll be like make a big difference, but I guess we'll find out.
It's cool either way that UCF has that connection with, like, they posted photos. They just drove the uniforms over to EA's headquarters and had them scanned into the game.
I'm excited about it too because I'm 4 seasons into my UCF dynasty, and I've had to wear the same space uniform every year for my space game that I just arbitrarily decided to have. So yeah, having a new one will be fun to.
You can mix and match.
I wish we could have all of them.
Mix and match elements with the 2023 space uniform if you want to. Come up with some new stuff.
I might have to do that.
Yeah,
and see how it looks. I'm gonna make an abomination and just post it.
Throw in a gold helmet for fun. See what happens.
It was just what I had in my brain. I was like, I'm just gonna use the pants from last year, this year's jersey, and a gold helmet, and it's gonna look awful.
I also have to call out some really impressive trolling from Eric DeSalvo on Twitter earlier today because he. Just when everyone's waiting for the space uniform to drop, he posted a photo of himself in what is admittedly a very cool, like, retro Citronauts jacket with the old orange and yellow and green Citronaut, and it has all those orange and green accents and all that. And so all of UCF Twitter was like, oh my God, they're going to do an actual throwback Citronaut uniform, which I was personally deeply uncomfortable with because I don't ever want them to do that, because if you do that, you are Miami. Like, that's what that's going to look like. And that was a scary time.
I don't think I ever believe, like, I don't know if I just can read Eric. I don't know if I can actually say that necessarily, but this time he posted that and I was like, I'm pretty 100% certain he's just trolling.
Not the first troll based off of the space uniforms over the last few years, but yeah, definitely. A lot of fans ran with that and were pretty convinced that's what was happening.
I did see someone else say that they actually thought he was announcing a career switch to Miami. Like, they thought he was like leaving and going to Miami. That's a scary thought. Yeah, that's a scary thought on its own. So I don't
even like that.
Yeah. Anything else? Because we do have a lot of other stuff to get to, but I know people that are probably like that don't care about uniform stuff, which I don't know. I don't know how you could last this long into the podcast. Not like this particular episode, but like getting to episode 227, not liking uniforms because of how often Christian and just this entire podcast talks about them. But anything else?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, love them. The one last thing I'll say is just that we have a version of what I think might be Pewter back, and we're going to take that as a victory, albeit a small one, in the war to return Pewter. But yeah, super cool uniforms. That I can't get over that moon dust splatter on the jerseys. Very freaking cool. Very excited.
I feel like I'm being teased with it. Like I just give me a pewter jersey back. I just want it.
You gotta
And
do it.
Terry's
You gotta
gonna
do it.
ruin my life.
Terry Mahajer, if you're listening,
Um,
which I doubt you are, I'm not sure you know who we are. I'd actually be a little surprised if you do. But if you do and you're listening, just a heads up, I will never be able to forgive you for this until you just give us Pewter back. So please, at some point, just let Pewter become part of the rotation again.
yeah, I'd love it. Let's get on to some of the things we missed from UCF TCU. Which I mean, I know we're recording this a little later than we do the normal podcast because it's a bye week, but it does feel like it was forever ago. It was 5 days ago.
Yeah.
But a couple of things that we missed, we talked about a few of these things and kind of revisiting them. I never went back and watched the blocked extra point because they didn't show it in the highlights, and I haven't been able to rewatch the full game. But the first of Boomer's block kick, there was three of them, which is insane to even look back on. Three block kicks. I believe the first one looked like he just never got the right trajectory on it, and it was blocked before it didn't even have a chance. The second one, I don't know what happened to Evan Morris. He just kind of like just was there, but also not. And the guy blew right by him and blocked it. Don't know what happened on the third one, but hopefully correctable things. Like I don't know the last time if I've ever seen a team have three kicks blocked in one game. Have you seen this before? Because I have not.
I can't recall a time, whether it be UCF's opponent or UCF itself, or maybe the NFL, or really any football game I've tuned into in my 27 years on this earth that I've seen that happen, which is maybe going to make what I'm about to say sound more dumb. But as we've gotten farther from the game, I've just found myself I don't know. I'm not overly worried about that. And I don't have some deep analysis to drop or to tell you that I really got onto the tape and feel like it's all correctable. It's just, it just felt like there was a fluky element to that, and B, I think it was pretty clear that TCU had a pretty strong special teams unit. I don't think every team they face is just from now on going to be doing that. Now they go out against Colorado and Boomer misses a PAT or a kick gets blocked again. Yeah, that's going to be the main thing we're going to be talking about on the podcast after that is special teams is a disaster. The stadium is on fire. The season is in the trash can. But I can't, like, can you sit here right now and imagine that happening again? I'm not saying they'll not have a kick blocked the rest of the season, but I'm saying them having
Three in one game, no.
Yeah. I don't know if I can
I've
imagine. I just can't
it.
imagine two in one game. I just can't imagine that being a thing throughout the course of the season.
Yeah.
Could be horribly wrong, but it's also, that's the number one thing they're working on over this bye week and going into the next week is, hey, let's have special teams not be a nightmare. So I have a hard time getting overly worked up about it, even though it's definitely a very bad thing that happened.
Just imagine, like, as crazy as that comeback was, it wasn't necessary if they didn't have those three block kicks. Like that really did a lot for the course of the game. And
I do have to say,
enjoy it.
because I get into this with people on football sometimes. Are you familiar with the butterfly effect?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like if you're listening to this and you're not, like it's like a scientific theory that, we don't know if it's true or not, but it's the idea is that like if a butterfly flaps its wings in New York, then you get different weather on the West Coast than you would have if it didn't. Like it's just small things cascade into larger things. And I'm a big believer in that with football. Like when a team misses a kick early in the game, like in the second quarter, and then we go into the fourth quarter, it's a tie game. They're like, if only made that kick. I'm like, the whole game probably plays out differently if you made that kick. So I don't necessarily go as 1-to-1 as like, yeah, they wouldn't have needed a comeback if he made that. It's just, you just never know what's gonna happen.
I mean, you can do it all day too, because I had thought about this probably the rest of the first half, where if KJ hit Kobe when he was open on that first drive with the deep ball, I think it was 2nd and 8 or something like that. If he hits them there and they go up 7-0 on that, I think our game's different. Like that's just how I felt the whole
and
time.
I think you have a strong case there because KJ misses that throw, which was a bad miss to be fair. And they basically went away from the deep ball until they were down bad. Like they didn't touch it again until late in the game. And obviously if he hits that, if you're Gus Malzahn, you're willing to open up the playbook a little more from there. And I'm also just and this is again one of those things you can't always prove in football. I'm a big, big believer in momentum in football. You just see it happen. You can see a team dominate all game. And there's some turnover, something flips them on their heads, and suddenly they're just not dominating anymore. We see that all the time. So, like, that would have been a big momentum swing to start the game with that. And yeah, it probably is a totally different game. But as of where things are right now, assuming they go on and have a good season and these problems don't continue to be problems, I wouldn't change a thing. That was a great comeback. Like, great. We'll talk about that game for a long time.
Yeah. Other thing, I think we referenced it, and we talked a little bit about the defense and Ted Roof, but they were absolutely awful on defense on third downs, especially. But on the flip side, the offense was great on third downs. It was very weird that both defenses just were basically lying down on third down, because UCF was 11 for 16 by the end of it, and TCU was 10 of 15. That is insane. Like that's insane for a third down conversion rate for both teams. I haven't seen that. This was a game of just things that I hadn't seen before, apparently, because I don't think I'd seen that either. And God, it was so frustrating for the defense in the first half, having good success on early downs. They'd get him to 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 10, and then Josh Hoover would just find the easiest slant ever and kept the drive going. Like I could not believe how much. And then I honestly, it felt, and I guess maybe because it was so frustrating, but it felt so problematic for UCF's defense. And I didn't even really notice until late in the game how successful UCF had been on offense on third downs. Like I looked up and I was like, those third down numbers are the same.
Yeah.
At one point, they were both 10 of 15, and I think UCF had one more where they converted.
I think you were the one who pointed out to me late in the game before when the comeback had started but wasn't in full swing. I think it was probably like 31-20 to point out. You're like, UCF's outgaining TCU right now, which was a surprise. I mean, I would love to know. This is a stat that you could never look up in a million years. There's really no way to do it unless you have some algorithm or something. But like, I would love to know how many teams in college football put up just 7 points in the first half of a game and finish that game with over 500 yards. That can't happen very often.
Somebody could figure that out. I don't know how.
It's not us.
I don't know how. I don't know how they can just manufacture space dust, but somebody would be able to figure that out. There are those stat accounts, but yeah, I from where that game started to where it ended, like I know 28 points in the second half, like isn't that crazy when you look at it just from a broad sense, but given the way the game was going, for them to turn it around the way they did, like that, it was. I still don't know really how it happened. Like it was just it was not one of those things that where it even slowly, I think maybe when it was 31-20, I was like, I don't think it's gonna happen, but like if you're like, stop, they're not coming back. And I was like, but if they do, and you're like, they're not. But
I mean, I think I said it on our post game. I never believed at any point in time that they were actually going to win that game. It was not. It's so funny that it was when he lined up for the 58-yarder. That was when I weirdly unclenched because I just in my head was like, he's not going to hit a 58-yarder. Like,
I still feared that he was going to.
Oh, I was still scared. I wasn't like the game's over, but that was the first time I actually started to believe a win was possible was not until they lined up for that 58-yarder. Because even when TCU got the ball back with 36 seconds, with the way they've been throwing it, there was no part of my brain that thought, yeah, UCF will hold them. Like I just thought they were gonna march down the field.
I tweeted at the time, I was like, there's just too much time left. I was like, I don't like this because I think they still might have had a timeout or two, and they had been getting down the field. I was not seeing a team move down the field that easily or that quickly until Monday night when the Falcons did it against the Eagles, because that was almost like TCU against UCF's defense for the most part. But I don't know. I don't know how it happened, but in the end, I was so, and we talked about it on the post game, how I had like an early flight the next morning, an early Uber, all that. It was so much easier to do after a win than had they lost that game. I was going to be miserable all day, and it was good, positive experience.
The worst one I've ever done, and this is going to unfortunately come at the risk of sounding like a humble brag about the places I've been, but in my defense, I was 17 and I was there with my parents. The worst one of that was going to Ireland and UCF losing on a last-second field goal to Penn State, and then an 8-hour flight. Just thinking about that, it's road games. It's so funny how the whole trip gets colored. Like now I'm like, what a great vacation, excellent time. And if they'd lost, I would have been like, hey, Fort Worth, never going back.
Someone I wish I knew who it was. Someone had asked me. They replied to one of my tweets during the first half, and were like, "Well, hopefully it was a good trip." And I was like, "It was a good trip up until 6:30 Central Time." And then after the game, the same person came back and was like, "And just like that, the entire trip was worth it." And I was like, "Exactly."
So, not to take us on a tangent on what already is going to be a very long podcast, but I'm worried we screwed up the Fort Worth trip because since I have returned to normal life, I have been asked repeatedly by people in my life, oh, did you do this? And it's like the same 3 things, and none of them are things we did. I've been asked,
what were they?
Did you go to the stockyards? We did not go to the stockyards.
Yeah, we knew that was a mistake.
Did you go to where JFK was shot? We did not go to where JFK was shot.
That was in Dallas.
Did you check out the downtown nightlife? No, we did not check out the downtown nightlife. So I just haven't done any of the things that these are like the repeated questions that I have been asked.
Where were all these people when we were asking for things to do?
Okay, to be fair, everyone told us to go to the stockyards. That wasn't like some small
stockyards off the table. But like no one was like, go to the J. I was told 2 years ago when I was in Dallas to go to where JFK was shot, and I was like, I'd fly out tomorrow morning. But I also
enjoy history a lot. That's probably come up on the podcast before. Like I'm reading Henry Kissinger's biography right now. I'm into history. I don't really care about seeing it where JFK was killed. It
would have been cool, but we were only there for a few days.
The museum, I would love to go to the museum. I don't like. It's like there's the hill. Like I'm like, well. Currently, it's just a hill, so I don't, but yeah. But
you can picture it all in your brain how it all played out.
Can I add a thing to things we missed? I'm sure you love when I do that. When you asked me earlier today, what would you like to add to things we missed, and I didn't.
Yeah, we already have 2 more, but go ahead.
I forgot really quickly about this one. The UCF XOs account on Twitter, which does more intelligent breakdowns. It's a good account, good follow. He made me feel a little bit better about the pass rush situation because we talked a lot about on the post game pod about how they just. It was 1 sack in the game, right?
Did they
Or was
have
it
any?
none? Or was it none? It might
Might
have
have
been
been
none.
none.
And for all the hype the D-line had this offseason, it's just weird that I could think it's one on the season through 3 games.
Yeah.
And how that's a bit alarming. He put together just like a chop up of clips of just like how the pass rush was seriously a half a second or less off like
Mm-hmm.
14 times throughout the game. And how Josh Hoover, the quarterback, did a very good job of sensing that pressure and getting the ball off in a nanosecond. And that made me feel better because A, they were really freaking close a lot of the
Yeah.
time. And B, not every quarterback they're going to face is going to be able to get out of that pressure over and over and over again. The quarterback they're facing in their next game might be able to, and that's worrying, but Graham Mertz isn't doing that, So like that
Yeah.
made me feel a little bit better about, okay, it wasn't just that they were getting stonewalled, which we knew, but it wasn't like they were just getting stonewalled and couldn't get in. It was just, they were just half a beat off repeatedly.
Yeah. I don't remember if I mentioned it on the post game podcast or not, but I can think of one particular example of that. I think it was maybe might have was the first or second touchdown throw of his, where he literally, I think he had a defender wrapped around his legs when he let go of the ball, and it was just a perfect ball in between two defenders. I think it was the second touchdown. And so yeah, I mean they almost got there, and again, yeah, they were. I'll reserve judgment. I'm not going to say everything's fine because they were close, because they could just be close all year long, and that's just kind of an evidence of, oh, they're not getting off the ball quick enough, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, I'm not going to write the pass rush off completely, but we'll see. We'll still see. It's kind of weird to still be 3 games in and be like, oh, the jury's still out, but they've played one legit game. Although I do love the stat that people are throwing around where it's like all of UCF's opponents are 2-1 with their one loss coming to UCF.
Means nothing since 2 of those 3
it doesn't mean anything,
but it's still interesting. I will be watching TCU's career with great interest from here. Like, I'm curious what they do for the rest of the season, because if they continue to be good, then yeah, that's that. I do feel like that. Who does TCU play this weekend? Probably a thing I should have looked up.
SMU.
See, big ACC match.
Wait, is that this weekend or next weekend?
Are they on a bye as well?
I have no idea. That's their next game though.
Either way, I don't know for sure, because you never know. Yeah, it's this weekend. You never know how a game's going to go, but TCU is one of those games where if we're getting to the end of the year, that could be a situation where that win looks a lot more impressive than we believe it to be now. That could have been an 8-win, maybe even a 9-win team that UCF went.
Yeah, I think they're a good team.
Yeah.
I don't think that was like UCF's down 28-7 to this garbage team.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's a good team. They got a good offense at least.
I think them rematching in December in the Big 12 Championship is going to be a heck of a show for everyone.
Yeah, it would break me probably, because that game really did. But
I don't even know if I could press a button right now that was like, big news, congratulations, UCF goes to the Big 12 Championship, but they face TCU. I'm not sure I'd press the button. I know that's so stupid, because they're probably going to lose 3 or 4 games this year and not go to the Big 12 Championship. But I'm like, I don't think they could beat them again. Like, I feel like I'd press
the button in a heartbeat, but but yeah,
you don't know you're locking in though. What if they make it there on like a 9-3 record? They lose to TCU, they're 9-4. Like, it's like, congrats, you made it.
I can't see UCF go 9-5 again. I can't see them do 9-5.
That you just pressed a button locking it in, Bailey. You just guaranteed that for this program.
I was laughing when you asked that question, because I wish I had a mashup of all of our episodes of this podcast where you've asked me, right now, congratulations, you can press a button that means this. Like, it is such a common thing that happens. And I think we do it, like, you ask me that in like our day-to-day lives too. And it's just funny. I wish there was like a montage of that, but
I do it a lot. And it's actually a good point. It's not just a podcast thing. I will do that in our day-to-day lives of just random scenarios.
You can press a button and that's what happened. You always say congratulations too.
Congratulations. I think, did I say it on this podcast?
Yeah, I think you did. Like, it just it hit me in that moment where I was like, wow, he does this a lot. And that made me laugh. But let's get back on track if we can. Wow, I did a really bad job here. Whatever the play was, Randy Pittman threw an incredible block on a touchdown. Well, it was one of RJ's touchdowns, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it was one of RJ's late touchdowns. Yeah. I think it was that run. It was maybe a 20-yard run that I think it was the one that made it 31-28, if I remember right.
Okay. Yeah, maybe it was. I did a horrible job of actually.
I just have to say, I
just saw the clip and was like, "Whoa!"
I don't want to come across as this is me trashing you in any way, because it's not. Bailey, in our division of podcast duties, one of Bailey's duties is putting together the outline, and he does a great job. It's a really good outline. Helps me stay on track. It's really, I feel like, for me more than you, because I always go off the rails. And his note here is Randy Pittman block.
Yeah, I was gonna do more. I was gonna do more with that, and then I didn't. But it was more so an avenue for me to just say, we talked on the postgame podcast about his 2 big catches and the non-fumble on the last drive. But I think for him to be as young as he is, and for him to be rounding, I mean, not even rounding, he feels like he is a pretty complete tight end.
Yeah.
That's so exciting. And I know in this era of college football, you can never count on a guy being here for his whole 4 years or whatever, but I hope he is. And if he is, I'm going to watch his career with great interest because he's already
Yeah.
shown flashes of being a really, really good tight end in an offense that doesn't really feature the tight end that much, but it's been fun to watch him develop and flash a little bit last year, and then now we're seeing it even more early on in his sophomore year.
I mean, like you said, he's a true sophomore. He shouldn't be this good this early. And it's funny that that class, assuming they stay, which again, like you said, it's nothing's for sure anymore. And I'm sure one of these three names I'm going to say won't finish their career with UCF because that's just the era we're in. But them getting Braden Marshall, John Walker, and Randy Pittman out of one class, that's one of those things we're going to look back on and be like, how the hell did they do that? You know?
Yeah, yeah, no, it was a good class, and we've seen a lot from because wasn't that the same? No, it wasn't the same class. Never mind. I'm thinking of the class before. Never mind. Scratch that.
Okay.
But it just shows what they've been doing on a year basis that I just confused the classes because they've had a few really good players from each of the last few classes, and that's good. That's
So the
very good stuff.
2023 class? Yes, because they were here for
Yes,
2023 last season. I'd love to look that up
yeah.
really quickly. That wasn't Caden Killer's class? He was a year before.
I think he was the year before. I'm not. I don't know. I'm really bad at all this at this point because it all runs together. I was thinking it
Yeah.
was it was Damari, but it wasn't Damari.
So from that class, this is interesting when you look at the class as a whole because that was the class that they got. They got John Walker, Braden Marshall, and Randy Pittman. Obviously, they also
Mm-hmm.
got Andrew Harris, who we're
Mm-hmm.
hoping will still turn into something. We also got Isaiah Nixon, who was getting some playing time against TCU.
Yep.
Caven Call, who we're starting to see a little bit more of as
Mm-hmm.
well. Like that class, which we knew was a good class at the time, but like that's
Right.
interesting that we're already seeing those guys.
Very. Last thing from the TCU game is something that I guess we have to make an apology on. We talked last week on the podcast about UCF not being built to come back from down by 2 touchdowns, and then
Yep.
they came back from down 3 touchdowns. I want to apologize because they obviously did it. I still don't think they're built to. They're not a team built to do that, but they've shown they can. So I have to put my foot in my mouth there, I guess.
I think it was excellent timing for us to say the issue with this team is can you imagine them coming back from down 14-0? No, like they just can't let that happen. And then, of course, they matched the biggest comeback in school history the week after
They
we say that.
they said,
So
what about 28-7? What about that? We never
I don't
said
know
21. We
why,
said
because
14.
I know it's fewer points, but them coming back down, like them going down 28-7 is one thing. Them being down 31-13 later, that's the more impressive comeback to me, even though it's fewer points, because that's just like, how the hell do you like I don't know, that's just such a game is over score. And
Yeah.
they somehow still got it done.
Yeah. I still can't really believe it. Like I watched, it was funny. I got to the airport way too early, actually. I was just trying to be safe to get there early enough, but got there way too early. And I'm sitting at my gate at whatever, 5:05, 5:15 in the morning. And I was like, let me pull up the highlights from last night. And I'm just sitting at the gate watching the highlights, just smiling with like bloodshot eyes, just being exhausted. And I'm like, oh, that was what a great game.
I,
Um,
at the airport, had one of the gate people tell me my flight left without me as a joke. Which, if you know me and my anxiety,
that's a
it
that's a cruel joke. It's great though. If it happened to me, I wouldn't like it, but
was
that's
actually
funny that
well.
it
The
happened to
funny
you.
no, because he knew he had a captive audience. Because to clarify, I'm there like an hour and a half before my flight is supposed to take off, and I ask him if I'm at the right gate, and he's like, "Where are you trying to go?" I'm like, "Flight to Orlando." And he's like, "Flight to Orlando left."
And it was probably one of those moments where you knew he was joking, but at the same time you were like, huh?
I did not know he
Like
was
you,
joking. I was
you
I
didn't.
where I went in my head was like, how did I screw this up? Like I was like, did I like book the wrong? Like how did I
That's
get
the thing.
here?
That's more what I meant. Is like I knew at that moment you had tricked yourself in your brain to think that
Yes.
you messed up and actually were late
Which
somehow, even though you knew for a fact you were that early.
this was not even 30 minutes before I went through security. And if you've ever flown, you know you have to, well, depends on the airport actually. You have to tap your boarding pass to go through security. I tap my boarding pass, it flashes up red. The man looks at the screen and says, "You're at the wrong airport." And what happened was I accidentally scanned my boarding pass to go to Orlando to Dallas.
Oh,
And
okay.
so I'd had two very bad scares in a very short amount of time, and I was rattled. So I did not watch the game in the airport. I
And
just
to
sat
remind the
there in
people,
shock. But
Christian wasn't at the airport at 5 in the morning. That was me.
that's
This all
right.
happened. This all happened hours later.
I know. It's
Um,
crazy.
yeah, wow. All right. We get into our third topic, which I don't know if we've done a 3 topic podcast in a while.
It's been a minute.
It's a bi-week mailbag, and you all did not disappoint with your questions. We have a lot to get through. We're going to try to be pretty breezy. Like each of these questions can't turn into long discussions because it's going to be crazy
Can,
long
can,
podcast.
can I say something really quickly about future Mailbag?
Yes.
I want to preface this with I
Yes.
love all of you. If you're listening to this,
I know what you're going to say, and I
except
agree.
for like two of you, I love you. I think you're all great. Anyone who asked the question, you're all great people. I love you all. I'm going to put a cap on how many questions you can ask in one reply. 6 is too many. We're going to answer them because we're nice, but we're trying. Like I feel like we could do 9 podcasts off these questions. So
And
we're gonna institute a limit going forward on number of questions in one tweet.
And I'm gonna add on to that because you just said number of questions in one tweet. That doesn't mean start sending us 6 replies with
Good
6
point.
different questions.
Good point.
I had to make that clear because you left an avenue there for these people to leave questions in 6 different replies.
I actually would have respected the hell out of it if I said like, hey, like let's try to limit to like not like that many questions in one tweet. Someone was like, say less and just sent like 9 individual tweets with questions. But yeah, we will try to get through pretty much all of these here.
We'll do it here. All right. Number 1. I don't know why I'm going to number them like that. This one comes from E. Alvarez, and this is a multi-part question. There will be more of those. Where do you rank this comeback in UCF history? We'll start there. The comeback itself, man, that's actually a good question. I probably should have thought of these more. I was like, oh, we'll just answer them when we get on the podcast. I was thinking about it in terms of where do I rank the game? And we were talking about that with our friend Zach on the way out of stadium. Like, where does this rank in terms of UCF games? And it's up there.
As far as comebacks, I'm gonna go. I think it's 2nd or 3rd is where I'd have it.
Yeah.
And the reasoning for me where I'm putting it is I have it. It's more impressive to me than the Boise State comeback in 2021, even though it's the same number of points.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's because even when they went down 21 points to Boise State, you're like, they have Dylan Gabriel. We've just spent several years watching this offense score in half a second. Like, I actually remember even when they're down 21-0, or was it 21-0 to Boise? Did they go down 21-0 straight up?
I think so, yeah.
I just felt
I was pretty inconsolable at that point.
I didn't think they were going to win, and I was upset, but I wasn't like they're going to get boat raced off the field. I was like they're going to recover. It's just going to be too late. So that one we're fighting off a sneeze, guys. Made it through. That one I would put this one ahead of. The 2 that I probably still have ahead of it, even though they're for fewer points, were both of the Memphis games in 2018. And that is because those Memphis teams were the TCU. It was similar where TCU was just kind of scoring at will, but like the Memphis running back, his name's out of my head, Darrell Henderson.
Oh, Darrell Henderson, yeah.
Darrell Henderson. They had no answer for through in the first half of both of those games, and Memphis is just putting up insane amounts of points. And the main reason I have both of those ahead too is the stakes were just undeniable. Both of those were to kill a long winning streak for UCF. One of them was in the AAC title game with a New Year's Six Bowl on the line. And you're just watching UCF hopelessly fall behind to an offense they have absolutely no answer for. And the 2018 Memphis AAC title game one stands out too in particular because UCF goes down big, has no answer for Memphis, then kills them. I mean, literally wins by 3 scores. And I still
also
can't believe
with
that.
the added context of them losing Mackenzie Milton the week before, and they had their backup quarterback they were playing with. That shouldn't have happened. That was a Mike Norvell special. Like, I remember watching that game during COVID and live tweeting it as I do, and being like, wow, he really messed this game up. I'm trying to find this picture of myself from early on in the Boise State game because, and I don't know if this one's going to show up as well as the Space game one did, but it's probably not going to. Oh, here we go. I'm wearing a mask because it was still shortly after COVID, and I had long hair at the time. Yeah, I was not happy at all. I honestly, I was going to ask you what we've already gone too far into a different conversation on one question of part 1.
This is not good.
No, it's not good. But what counts as a comeback? Because
would you double digits?
Okay, never mind then. Because I was going to say the Louisville drive to come back, in that game. I would put that ahead of TCU if we're counting that. I don't know what is really, we're getting into the weeds here, but it's up there.
I don't think that was a comeback. What were they down by that Louisville? Did they go down double digits? I feel like they may have at one point, actually. Maybe that is it. God, that game was, I do not like that.
Game was 11 years ago.
I just don't like, I'm at the age now where I can like clearly remember where I was watching a game from 11 years ago. Like, I just don't like that.
Yeah. They were down. No, they were up. Oh, yeah, they went down 28-7 in that game.
They were down 28. Yeah, they were down. Yeah. They were down 20. No, they were never down 21. They were never down 28-7. No way.
Well, then ESPN's wrong.
I'm looking at, where do you see them down? I'm looking at ESPN right now. Where do you see them down 28-7?
In like the actual score summary, it's really weirdly, like, it doesn't even have the actual details of who scored the touchdowns. It just says 20. You see where it says 28-7?
I don't remember that.
I
Maybe
don't
they
either,
were.
but
Maybe
wow,
they
this is
were.
bad.
Okay, well, if that's true, which it might be, then that's the best one.
Yeah. Um, okay, let's get to the other part of this question before we
Okay.
spend 3 hours on this podcast. 3 weeks in, this is also from E. Alvarez. 3 weeks in, who do you think is making the better case of being the third best conference, the Big 12 or the ACC?
It's what's going to be fun about this in the years going forward is it's a philosophy more than one clearly better than the other, because what the ACC is the ACC has programs that Big 12 doesn't. Like Miami's number 8 right now. I don't know if a Big 12 team is going to make it into the top 5 this year. I think Miami's probably a week away from doing that, but Big 12's deeper. As far as
Mhm.
ranked teams this week, the ACC's got number 8 Miami, number 19 Louisville, and number 21 Clemson. Big 12 has got number 12 Utah, number 13 Kansas State, number 14 Oklahoma State, number 20 Iowa State. So like the Big 12 has more teams that are better, but they don't have
Mhm.
anyone who's like a clear national championship contender, which I think Miami thinks they might be this year. So until Miami falls off, which, like, let's be real, is on the table, it's pretty even. If Miami does fall off, then yeah, you're gonna have to go with the Big 12. Clemson's been whatever this year. They're probably going to continue to improve. FSU is an actual horrible program.
Awful.
So I don't
Yeah.
know. That's why I find the rivalry between those two so interesting. And if you didn't see the news this week, Dellinger and ESPN and The Athletic and just about everyone reported that Clemson and FSU are now open to remaining in the ACC. And it's still not close to being done, but they're working on a deal that will change the TV contract and basically give them all the money and they'll stay. So that the blow up of the ACC might not be happening. So it's going to be weird to see
Mhm.
those two kind of go back and forth for position. And it's just interesting that the ACC has better brands and they have teams that can win a national championship. I know you're going to be mad if I say this, if you're a UCF fan, probably, but like the Big 12 does not have a program that can win a national championship. That doesn't mean that'll always be the case. Maybe some develop into that, but right now they just don't. But they're
Mhm.
also just a lot deeper. They don't have dead weight.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was thinking immediately like ACC. I'm thinking who are the better teams in the ACC right now, and answering that versus answering who the better teams in the Big 12 are. I was like the Big 12 is a better conference, but
Yeah.
ACC also does have what are they, number 8 Miami, I think.
Yeah. Number 8
Um,
Miami. The
so
ACC, I should know, also has had some embarrassing losses this year, and the Big 12 has had as well. Like, obviously, if Kansas loses, I don't know. Is UNLV an embarrassing loss at this point?
UNLV seems like a decent team. Like they're a
Yeah.
solid team.
So maybe not even then, but I mean, like Virginia Tech lost to Vandy, who then has gone on to just show that they are still Vandy. NC State was it Tennessee who just destroyed NC State?
Yeah.
And those are
And
two
then
programs that are like supposed to be some of the better programs in the ACC.
did NC State lose again this past week?
They
I
might
think they.
have.
I mean, I know Grayson McCall got hurt,
Yeah.
but I don't know. We're doing a bad job as far as I'm like, did this happen to clean up the first part of this? Yes, they were down 28-7. I have a quote from George O'Leary in that Louisville game. He said, "We got down 28-7. They could have just hung their heads, but no, they didn't. They got after it. We got some breaks and got some things done and kept pounding."
That's funny.
So
I
yeah,
remember them being
so
down. I guess I didn't realize it was that. Then
the
that's it. Then
21.
that's
So
it.
they've matched. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's number one. But I would put TCU probably that's top five because I
Top
do agree
five.
with you.
Yep.
The Memphis games, I think, with all the stakes and the context, more I'd put them up there, but probably fourth unless there's going to be some crazy ones that I don't know about or can't remember at this time. But
NC
yeah,
State beat
that's
Louisiana Tech 30-20 this weekend.
oh, so they did end up okay, they ended up
Yep.
winning, but I knew they were struggling.
Yep.
Here's another question that I'm probably not going to answer directly. Here's from JP Gilbert. He asked if Shaquem Griffin is the best linebacker in UCF history. Deshaun Pace is number blank of all time.
He's number TBD. I don't know how to answer that after 3 games.
I don't know how to answer that. He's very good. He's very talented.
Yeah.
And I feel every day dumber and dumber that neither of us took him in our transfer draft because we just didn't know who was going to play.
Arguably the worst thing we've done on this podcast.
The stadium survey still happened.
Oh, okay. Arguably the second worst thing we've done on this podcast.
But yeah, I don't know. A talent wise, like if we were talking about talent again, we haven't seen him enough to be able to quantify this. But and again, this is where we get ourselves into trouble with like if we're going to reference and just off of our heads who is the best linebackers in UCF history. Like I'm going to forget someone. So I don't know. Let me just say by the end of the year, he could be top 5.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you got to have Terrence Lewis in there. But other than that, yeah, I don't know. This is a question that's just
you threw me off. I thought you were going to say Terrence Plummer, and then you went Lewis, and I was like, okay, so we're not being serious anymore.
The most famous player named Terrence from UCF's defense.
Correct.
I don't know. It's just the thing about college football is we're still so young into the season. I don't expect this, but it's like Deshaun Pace could go out against Colorado and be horrible. And honestly, that was a little bit of his reputation at Cincinnati was he would do awesome things, then do some very stupid things sometimes. So I'm not ready to rank him in any way yet, but I think he has potential to get there.
What he did on that second to last TCU drive, where he basically, I'm pretty sure, I know he got credited probably with the first 2 tackles and not the third one, but he stopped the guy on the third one to allow the guys to rally to the ball and
Yeah.
stop him short of a first down. He took over that
It
drive.
was
And it was even
game-breaking
cooler.
behavior. It really
Yeah,
was.
and it was even cooler that they had the clip of him in, I guess not Nightflix, they've retired the name. What do they call it? Night Rewind?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. And they had a clip of him saying, "We're gonna get a stop and we're gonna get the offense back to we're gonna get the ball back to the offense and KJ, and they're gonna do their thing." And they just cut to the highlights of Deshaun Pace doing it himself, basically. And then they get the ball back. And yeah, so
Yeah.
he's been very impressive. And I
I
feel
think
like
there is a
more
real
on.
chance that he is the postseason defensive MVP. I think that is very much on the table.
Absolutely, I think the leader in the clubhouse right now for that. So, but
Wow.
again, we're 3 games in.
Yeah.
So, that was quick. We're on to the third one from Jordan Douglas. Do we miss playing USF? Watching the Apple Cup and Civil War this weekend had me thinking. Love the Big 12, but I miss having a rival down the road. Well, there's still the rival down the road. I don't
They
think
still are
rivalry
there.
has died because
They are
everybody
still
still
down the
hates each
road.
other, and everybody. It's gotten. I mean, that hasn't gotten old because that's just the rivalry. But it every week, like the UCF USF Twitter fights still happen every single week.
They arguably happen more now than they did before. The
Yeah.
War on F4 has entered an interesting season where what happens now is both fan bases angrily declare we don't care about them anymore. They're not our rival anymore, and then prey on the other's downfall like there is no tomorrow every second of every day. Like I really,
Yep.
it's actually weirdly intensified in some ways. Yeah, I mean I've talked about this multiple times.
Mhm.
I'm gonna miss them. I missed them last year. I find them to be a remarkably frustrating group of human beings, and I really enjoy when UCF brings that group of people misery. And it's disappointing that that's just not really an opportunity for them anymore. Because what's also going to happen now is it's like any rivalry where they don't play anymore. It's like Texas A&M. They just start comparing stupid stuff. Like we're
Mhm.
an AAU school, or like we have a stadium and you don't, like just the stuff that it's like I'd rather just beat them. Like I'd rather just play them
And
and watch them lose.
even along those lines, it gets to, oh, well, we would kill you guys this year. It's
Yes.
like, all right, well, we won't find out barring a bowl game. So like, I don't know if you're right or wrong. Like,
Yeah.
I don't believe you, but
And UCF does
no one
have
is going to be proven right. So
UCF does have the upper hand on that stuff just because they're in a power conference and USF is not. But it is little things like, when USF lost 42-16 to Alabama and was proud of that. And their takeaway was, we would crush UCF if we played them this year. They're terrible. And it's and in other seasons, like for the last decade, basically, I could just be like, well, it's going to be a good November. We'll talk then. And now it's like,
mhm.
well, we're just going to keep yelling at each other back and forth and nothing will be resolved for years. So yeah, I
I'm
absolutely wish that was still a game being played.
I miss playing them. I don't want them in the Big 12. I don't want them like
No, I don't either.
I would like to see that be like back on the schedule as a non-conference rivalry game, but I don't hope for them to get into our conference or into any other, major conference that they think they're going to.
It's
I'm
where
not.
we lose the point of what we're doing here. I feel like sometimes because if I'm sure there are people listening to this right now who, when you said that, I wish we'd schedule them non-conference. Their take is, what does UCF have to gain from that? You're already ahead of them. All you do is elevate them, and yeah, that's true. But I just feel like we, especially in this current year of college football, we've just sort of forgotten that it's supposed to be fun. This is an
Mhm.
entertainment product, and playing your rival is part of that. And I hate that we're at the point where basically every program can easily justify any decision by, well, if that's not in our program's explicit best interest, then we are just never going to do it because that's just lame. And that's unfortunately, it's not a unique to UCF thing. That's where everything is right now in this sport. And
That's
then the War on F4 is just another casualty of that.
on a different scale, but that's Wake Forest canceling their game with Ole Miss next year just because they don't want to get
I
beaten
have
down
to
that
think
badly.
that was just unfortunate timing because I don't think you can just like pick up the phone and cancel the
Well,
series. But it was like Wake
did you
Forest
see
loses
too?
badly to Ole Miss and then immediately cancels the next game.
They scheduled a new series today with
Yeah,
Oregon
this was in the
State.
works for a while then. There's
So
no
it
way they
had to
pulled
have
that
been,
all off.
but
But it was just
yeah,
hilarious. It was literally the day after Ole Miss destroyed them. They were like, we're actually not going to play the next game.
yeah. Lane Kiffin's not happy about it.
Yeah.
All right, next question is from Stephen Leonard. He says, "What happens first? Napier fired, FSU wins multiple games, or UCF and Miami clinch bowl eligibility?"
Stephen Leonard
I
of Knights 247 fame.
don't know
Ugh.
how to answer
Is
this.
it all right? All right. All right. All right. It's Billy Napier fired in my mind.
I think so because I still think he's going to get fired before the UCF game.
This is what's interesting because he absolutely could. Why I'm going with that one is that Florida should beat, as bad as they are, they should beat Mississippi State. Mississippi State just paid Toledo $1.7 million to come to their stadium and blow them out. So like Florida should win that game. But I feel good with that one because if they do not win that game, Napier is gone that night. So that's why I feel that one is. I also like, I don't know about FSU could be in there too. I assume FSU is going to win some games at some point. I don't think they're going to actually go 0-12 or 1-11, but I don't know.
Yeah. I don't think like I was thinking about FSU. Like I don't think they'll beat Cal this weekend. Shout out Cal Twitter. I don't know. I mean, I don't know their schedule well enough, but I think next week they have I'm not gonna remember. Whatever, doesn't matter. Yeah, I guess that's a good point because I forgot UF also has a bye next week.
Yeah.
So as long as they beat Mississippi State, they're not gonna fire him before the UCF
They might use the
game.
bye to fire him. Interesting. I was reading about this, and this should be
Imagine they
music to
fire him
the
after he beats Mississippi State. They'll be what, 2-2? Or two. Yeah.
It wouldn't even be the first time in the last year we've seen a coach get fired after winning.
That's true.
Wouldn't even be the second time, actually. Both Andy Avalos was fired after a blowout win for Boise State, and Jimbo was fired after a win at Texas A&M, if I remember right. But what UCF fans should be rooting for is for them to fire him before the UCF game, because I was reading a lovely ESPN story about part of the reason that Florida is trying to figure out how to get rid of him, because apparently it's been reported by everyone the decision is made. There is nothing he can do at this point to return next season.
Well, they had a board of trustees meeting, right? Or
they did not.
They did not?
Yeah, that wasn't true, apparently.
Okay.
Yeah. But the part of the problem they're running into is that there is no clear interim on the staff, because Billy Napier assembled a staff of virtually no one with prior head coaching experience. So they're not sure who's going to step in when they fire him. So if it's going to get even worse when they do fire him. Apparently literally the only person on staff who has real head coaching experience is Dan Enos, who's an offensive analyst and who served as Central Michigan's head coach 10 years ago. That's their one option.
That was KJ's OC last year, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
When it went poorly.
When it went very badly, and he was fired after one season as Arkansas's OC. He then went to Florida.
Did he go the whole season?
No. It was
he missed
He then went to Florida to be an off-field analyst, and by the time UCF goes to the Swamp, he may be their head coach. That's how bad the situation is in Gainesville.
My answer is still Billy Napier gets fired, because I don't think FSU beats Cal this weekend, so they wouldn't have a chance to get to 2 wins or to get to multiple wins. And then I think if UCF beats Florida, whether he gets fired this weekend or on the bye week, or if UCF beats him, I think he's fired then. So I still think that might happen before everything else.
Yep, I think you're right.
Yeah. All right.
We're getting through these very fast. We're doing a good job.
Yeah, sort of. We spent a long time on the first one. Doug Diamond asks, along the lines of the Florida game, if UCF beats UF, are you worried it'll be more Florida bad rather than UCF good?
Why don't you drop your opinion on this one? Because you've been bringing this up to me more and more over the last few days.
I think so. I think it might be, but I also don't care.
Good answer.
Like if UCF beats Florida, you can't say anything to me. Because they did it in the Casper. Oh, we didn't have a real coaching staff, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Half our players are in the portal, which isn't even true. And they did all that. Like they'll do the same thing. They'll say either Billy Napier sucks and we're firing him for a reason, or if he gets fired before, then they'll say, oh, you just be an interim coach again. I don't care. Like I think the narrative will be a lot about Florida, and UCF caught Florida on a down season. But also, I don't care. So, yeah, there you go.
The whole UCF caught Florida thing also holds less weight when this is their second straight win over Florida. But listen, I talked a lot of this offseason about how I feel like this is a program-defining game for UCF, and it's one they absolutely have to win. I knew Florida was going to be bad, and I did not anticipate it would be this bad. That hasn't fully changed for me for a few reasons. I do want to say, as far as Doug Diamond's question, yeah, I do worry about that narrative. That I don't think that the absolute heights of what I thought that win could do for UCF in June still are true if UF continues to lose the way they're looking like they will. But at the same time, there's 2 other factors at play. The first is that regardless of if Florida goes 0-12 this year, the everlasting images of UCF winning a game in the Swamp are hard to stamp out. And no matter how bad Florida is, with how bad they are, with how bad FSU is, that is still a legitimizing moment for UCF to spend most of or all of the season as one of the 2 dominant teams of the state in a conference where no one's really going to make the argument of, oh, it's a high school schedule or whatever. That's still incredibly valuable. That's the first factor at play. The second factor is the stakes have been raised in that it just became so much worse if UCF loses this game. If you meet Florida at their absolute worst, the worst they have been in 70 years, and you cannot beat them, that's a stain that does not come off. And it really, in some ways, has made me more concerned for the game than I was when we thought they were going to be a little bit better.
You just made me feel a lot worse and a lot more
stressed. That's what I'm here for.
So that's great. Yeah, and I think the whole thing was catching Florida on a down year. That also holds less weight when like most years these days are down years for them.
Yeah,
Like
like have an
it's
up year and we'll talk.
yeah.
They're never that good.
Yeah. All right, next one. These are I say these because this is another several parter from Joanne Gustav, I think is that how you say that? This is a general one, but realistic outlook for the rest of the season. Um hmm. I don't know.
Okay.
Because if you had asked me this question in the first half of the TCU game on Saturday, I would have told you we're doomed and everything sucks and this team is horrible and I don't even want to watch the rest of the games. Now that they came back and won that game, that everything's on the table. But
Yeah.
I don't know. It's such a week to week thing in college football, but also in the Big 12. Like I think I have a pretty good feeling. Like I think they'll beat Colorado, but they could come out and lay an egg against Colorado, and then they play Florida the next week. It's such a week to week thing. I still probably would stick with what I said before the season, which was 8-4. I think maybe 9-3, but I don't know. TCU was one of those toss up games I had before the season. I think was like it's the first test and we won't really know. And they barely passed it, but they passed it. So
Yeah.
8-4, 9-3 still, I think, is what I'd probably lean toward.
I was going to say I'm still at 8-4, and I want to clarify that that doesn't mean they can't do better than that. One of my favorite things that I feel like people forget about the 2013 UCF team, that conversation we just had, Louisville being the perfect example, is that's by pretty much any measurement considered the second best team in UCF history. They almost lost every single week, and they just kept finding ways to win. And so 2024 UCF could be that team where we just have a lot of incredibly stressful games, and they find a way to pull it out because that's just kind of what football is. But
2022 TCU did it. That was them.
They did.
They went to the college football playoff final.
They went to the national championship game, and they're at 3 wins right now. I see 2 more gimmies on the schedule. I see Cincinnati and BYU. Those are both shaping up to seemingly be team games that UCF should win. I know BYU's 3-0, but like, let's be real, they're not looking good. And that gets you to 5 wins with those 2. And I kind of just see them sort of having a mishmash of the rest. I think they'll win some and they'll lose some, and that probably gets them to around 8-4. I think they're going to be in a position to have a chance to be a 9-3 or 10-2 team, and that's exciting. And I hope they can, but I couldn't with a straight face predict that right now.
Yeah, no, I couldn't either. Move on to the next one from Joanne. Will UCF face Lagway or Mertz, and which would you prefer? This is the two UF quarterbacks. And I don't know. I think a couple of weeks ago I would have said, and I think I still will say, I would rather face Mertz. I think. Although Josh Hoover's performance, I don't know. I don't know if Mertz is as good as Josh Hoover, but Josh Hoover's performance was enough to be like, all right, well, Mertz is at least a veteran quarterback who might be able to, but I think Lagway's talented enough and good enough in all facets of everything to kind of scare me more than Graham Mertz would.
I'm torn on this because, I don't think Graham Mertz is an overly good quarterback. I do think he's a quarterback who's maybe not going to make crazy mistakes. DJ Lagway, it's one of those things where it's sort of the risk reward of, does he come out there and that's his coming out game and he puts up 4 touchdowns and leads them to the win, or is it a game where he's a true freshman and does some dumb stuff that UCF can take advantage of? So it's the lame answer, but I don't know. There's pros and cons to both. I also just feel like it's going to be Mertz at this point. Unless he does something horrific against Mississippi State, I don't really know what's going to transpire. The fact that they chose to go back to him when they had the easiest excuse in the world to stick with Lagway after he got concussed, I don't know. That to me implies that he's going to be the guy.
But again, this is where the bye week comes into play. I wonder if they could use the bye week to get Lagway ready to make his first. Well, I guess not his first start, but make that start. My answer I think is Mertz, and as far as which one will they face, that one is the one I'll say I don't know to, because I'm done. Not that I was trying that hard before, but I'm done trying to predict what Billy Napier is going to do.
I don't know what Billy Napier's motivation is at this point anyway. It's like he's out of a job either way. It's like, what do you just not play Lagway out of spite?
Maybe you do that. I don't know. He's got to make it look not so bad so that like he can get on as coordinator somewhere next year. I don't know.
The important thing to keep in mind,
he doesn't need to though, because he's going to make a bunch of money.
If Florida wins the Mississippi State game and then they go through the bye week, the UCF Florida game will very likely be his final game as head coach. And I think that adds a very interesting and potentially frightening element to everything that's going to go on that night.
Yeah, we'll just be running fake punts and just
all kinds of
throwing everything out the window.
Like you're like literally playing what he will probably know at that point is his last game as head coach.
Another one from Joanne. Again, this is we're running into where you have 4 or 5 questions from the same people.
Hey, we didn't specify, so
We
we
didn't,
can't be
to be
upset about
fair.
it. We have now specified for
It's just
future
funny when
mailbag.
I'm like going down the list and saying like this is also from the same person. Which Big 12 team / game did you think might be a problem before the season but isn't any longer?
None of them. They're all still problematic. I have a
Again,
reverse
yeah,
of
I
it
don't.
though. I have a reverse of it though. I didn't think
Yeah,
Arizona State was going to be a problem, and boy, do they seem like a problem now. They look way farther ahead than where I think most people thought they were going to be in year two of the Kenny Dillingham era. They've beaten Mississippi State, which looks less impressive by the week, but they
yeah.
destroyed Wyoming, who's always a pretty solid program, and they went to Texas State, GJ Kinney's Bobcats, who have been one of the G5 darlings of this year, and they won a close one. So they should not be. That was not a team I had starting 3-0, and that
Well,
is when that is a 10:30 p.m. Eastern time kick. I'm not even gonna pretend UCF's gonna win that game. Like let's just call that what it is if that's the kick time.
what makes that worse is that we did talk on this podcast about how that was going to be a tricky game just because it's all the way out at Arizona State. By that point, maybe they'd be, clicking a little better. Well, by this point, they're already 3-0 and they already are clicking pretty well.
Yeah.
So, like, we were concerned before. We thought they might not be that good, and they do seem to be at least decent to pretty good. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if I have I don't think West Virginia's looked particularly good, but like if that game was at home, I'd maybe feel better. But it's
They
still
played good
hard to
teams
go
too.
to West Virginia. Yeah, and like I think my brain is more going off of watching. The most I've watched them this year was against Penn State, and I think Penn State's a good team and better than UCF. So it's like I don't know if I can really judge that.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know if there really is a team that is not a problem that I thought was going to be a problem. So that's scary. The last one here from Joanne was: can 2 Big 12 teams get into the playoff? I right now. Let me think about this.
Watch
I don't.
what
Okay, go ahead.
the polls do with Utah and Oklahoma State after their game this weekend, and that might help show the answer a little bit. I know this is the AP poll, not the college football playoff, which is obviously a whole other thing that doesn't start for a few more weeks, but there are differences, but the CFP rankings tend to pretty closely stick with what the AP poll does. There's not giant differences there. If that's a game that the loser gets dropped like 9 spots, then you kind of see how people are looking at the Big 12. If that's a game where it's close and they keep both of them in that top 15 range, and now they kind of have open schedules to try to compete, like that game is going to say a lot about how the Big 12 is valued. Because right now they're in a situation where you got 4 teams ranked as conference play really gets underway. That's what you want, because the hardest situation for teams to deal with is when you have a conference where no one's ranked, because then it's no one can really build off each other. Going with 4 is good because that gives an opportunity for teams to earn big wins that sort of keeps them up in the poll. But I don't know. I feel like your best bet is honestly going to be if a top 10 Big 12 team misses the Big 12 championship game. Because my fear is that, and I think it's the most likely, is that the Big 12 championship is going to be a matchup of 2 teams in the like 15, somewhere in like the 12 to 16, 17 range.
Yeah,
Where the
like
loser's
12
not going to,
versus 14.
yeah, like
something like that.
this. And where the loser obviously is not going to hold on to a top 11 seed, which is what you're probably going to need to stay in the playoff. So yeah, I don't know. It's possible, but I guess it just depends on what else is happening in college football too, because the bids have to go somewhere. And the SEC is looking like a 5-bid league, which I'm sure everyone's going to love. The ACC is not looking like a 2-bid league right now. Not at all. Notre Dame could steal one, but they lost to Northern Illinois, so I don't know. It's good. I just love that we can talk about this, like bid thieves and stuff in college football. It's like such a novel concept, and it's going to get November. I know I've said it a billion times, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, particularly on a podcast where we have 40 billion questions to get through. But I love how crazy November is going to be now in college football. It's going to be unbelievable because every game is going to have playoff implications. It's weird when we're watching UNLV Kansas at the Buffalo Bros place in Fort Worth, and the broadcasters are like, this one's got some playoff implications. UNLV, are they grabbing onto that G5 spot? I love that. It's so good for the sport, for all of the conferences in all of the country to be engaged in this, versus this time, like literally by this week in most seasons, you're down to like 10 teams who are seriously. And this is the total opposite of that now.
Yeah, no, I can't wait for all like the brackets. Like you start to get like, oh, here's what the bracket would look like. And I'm sure they'll start that probably even earlier than they really need to, but it'll be fun.
And all the doom and gloom that anti-playoff expansion people had of like, oh, the games won't matter anymore. Has any game felt like it didn't matter to you because of this? No. Yeah.
I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Next is Mike. It says, what's our plan when Kobe gets double teamed? Which other wide receivers step up and do they? That's a great question. I think when he gets double teamed, their plan is to keep throwing him the ball.
Yeah, and I think that's fine.
He can make some contested catches that are crazy. I don't know. I think Randy Pittman is like maybe solidly like their second receiving option. Well, I guess all the running backs collectively are the second receiving option. But Randy, like we said on the post game, like Townsend hasn't done enough, and they haven't really given him enough targets in the actual passing game to really see whether or not they're going to use him as anything more than a gadget player. I know Gus was so like frustrated by the him being labeled a gadget player last year. Yeah, and he was like, "Oh, did he look like a gadget player?" Yes, he does, and
Yeah.
it's not Xavier Townsend's fault. That's your fault.
And
So
we'd
not you,
started
Christian.
to
I'm talking about
we
Gus, but
st
not you.
thanks. I thought you were telling me that I'm the
It's
reason
your
Townsend's
fault.
used wrong. We'd
Yep.
started to call ourselves on this a little bit as the season got closer because we spent a lot of the offseason just saying, yeah, they've got two receivers. Who will be the third? And really all we were basing that off of was that Townsend's been here because he really didn't take a giant leap in his sophomore season. And I'm not seeing the leap. And we're early. We're 3 games in. Maybe he has a big game, but he's not someone that I just feel like you're absolutely going to rely on. But I'm just also not overly worried about the whole idea of Kobe being double teamed or anything like that. Because let's be real, it's like the offense doesn't run through Kobe Hudson. It runs through RJ Harvey. It
Mhm.
runs through the run game. So that's not something that debilitates the offense if they start paying extra attention to Kobe. I'm sure they will before long, but I don't know how much it changes things.
Yeah. This other one from Mike is directed at you. It says also you have to keep this Olive Garden thing going. Insane to watch Olive Garden posting about UCF football. Is there more of a backstory other than you just liking Olive Garden?
So a couple things here because a few people asked about this. One, I didn't realize I started the Olive Garden UCF thing. I had to like go through Olive Garden's tweets because I just kind of was like, "Am I a part of this?" Or did it start? I kind of did start me tweeting about Olive Garden a lot. I don't know. I didn't try to do this. I didn't try to marry my two great loves. The backstory for me is
That's a
for
great
the
out of context sentence. I didn't
I
try to marry my two great loves. Like
literally
you're
exactly
looking
what's
back on
happened,
your
man.
life of regrets.
We had Olive Garden tweeting a pasta knot. I really, this is actually the happiest I've ever been in my entire life. And the backstory for me of Olive Garden is really quickly. I'm sure I've mentioned this on the podcast in bits and pieces over the years. That so I am Italian. My grandfather actually was born in Italy and came over and moved to America when he was a kid. That was how my family got here. So as you can imagine, my family is not thrilled with my favorite restaurant choice. Because they're Italian. But I have loved Olive Garden since I was a little kid. I don't remember the first time I went there. I don't remember what my first experience was. It's like as long as like memory goes back for me, I remember loving Olive Garden. When I was 6 years old, we went to Olive Garden the night before we were going to Italy. Because obviously I was like, gotta get this in before we go to Italy. And 6-year-old me, in his infinite wisdom, had the breadsticks taken to go and took them to Italy because I told my parents I wanted to compare them to Italian food. And I felt at the time, and I was probably right, let's be real, the Olive Garden breadsticks were better than any breadsticks we had in Italy. I actually can remember that. Like one of my older memories is being in Italy then and having an Italian breadstick and being like, this is not as good as what I got at Olive Garden. A few years after that, we were at Olive Garden and the fire alarm went off. And this is another one of those things I don't remember. My parents told me about it. I think it was like 9. The fire alarm went off, and my instinct was to grab the breadsticks before running for the door. So I did actually carry the breadsticks outside. I think in my brain, I just thought that like if that Olive Garden burned down, I couldn't just go to another one. So I had to like preserve what I had. But this has been a long running thing for me. And I've honestly I've tweeted about Olive Garden for years. There wasn't some concerted effort of let me get them involved with UCF. I think the big thing that started recently was when the news broke that the Big 12 is considering a naming rights deal. I immediately was like, they need to be the Olive Garden 12. And then Olive Garden tweeted one of the best graphics I've ever seen in my life, which was the 12 Roman numerals spelled out in breadsticks. And I've loved seeing them get involved. They tweet UCF fans all the time now and stuff. And it
It's
genuinely
weird.
warms my heart. But it's cool because another thing that you should know if you don't know if you're listening is Olive Garden is based in Orlando. That's an Orlando area
Yes.
company. Darden, which owns and founded Olive Garden, is the first ever Olive Garden was here. It's the
You've
only
lost
Fortune
everyone.
500, only Fortune 500 company in Orlando. I don't care. It's my podcast. Leave if you want. What do I care?
All
It's
right,
just my
bye.
heart and soul you'd be ripping out by stopping listening to us. And it's like seeing a big or like one of the biggest companies in Orlando get involved with UCF like that on social media and just have some fun. It's freaking cool. It's awesome. And I've loved every single freaking second of it. And I hope it continues for the rest of time.
For all of that Olive Garden talk, there's still more questions about Olive Garden coming up. All right, next one comes from Ethan. Is it too early to predict our 2025 record? We already know our 12 teams we play. Yes, it's too
Yes, it
early.
is.
Number 9. No, I was thinking, I saw this question and I was like, we have whatever. We're 3 games in. We have 9 games plus whatever, hopefully conference championship and bowl games, all that stuff to enjoy this time right now. Because then from January all the way until next August, we're gonna have to talk about 2025. So for that reason alone, I'm not even going to look at 2025 yet, but also the fact that we don't know the order they play, we don't know who's going to be on the team, all of that, I don't want to get into
Could
it.
you imagine if in September of 2023 you'd ask me what I'm thinking for 2024 and I've been like, well, yeah, we'd have to talk about KJ Jefferson who's not on the team or Deshaun
Yeah.
Pace who's not on the team or the entire
Yeah.
defense. Like there's just no in the portal era there's no way to predict more than You can't predict next season. I have no idea. They might go
Yeah.
on 12. They might go 12-0. Your guess is as good as mine.
So yes, the answer is it is too early. Number 9 comes from UCF. Chris, do you get a side of Alfredo with your breadsticks at Olive Garden? This is also for you.
Okay, so it depends on who I'm going with. My parents don't prefer that because they find it unhealthy. If I'm with friends, absolutely. The answer is you always should. And oh man, I was realizing I'm about to reveal just how insane I am with food, but I was gonna say because what you can also do if you're a freak like I am is order chicken Alfredo for your entree, and then when it arrives, just dump whatever's left over in the Alfredo dish on the chicken Alfredo and have like extra Alfredo-y chicken Alfredo.
All right. This is the last question. Well, several questions. I don't know if I didn't want to butcher the name here, so I'm just going to call you Z Dad. This is another one that we just kind of referenced a little bit. Do we have a wide receiver too?
No.
I guess it's Randy Pittman.
Randy Pittman.
To me.
I was going to say Randy
He's my wide receiver too. This win was the happiest UCF football has made you since blank.
I know we're doing rapid fire and I had nothing ready. Since they revealed since Oklahoma State last year, probably.
You're gonna say since they revealed the space uniforms today. You're gonna say the win on Saturday.
I stopped myself.
Yeah, I mean it has to be Oklahoma State. Like
I'm trying to think of another time I was happy since then. Well, not like in life, but just regarding UCF football. They got them getting KJ was pretty cool, but I'd say Oklahoma State. That was the close. I mean, I felt honestly, no, I was because I was happier for this than I was for that because that was like a slow burn because we knew over 2 hours they were going to win that game. That final moment of jubilation.
Yeah,
ooh, it's been a long time. It's been a long. time.
It's the happiest I've been in a while. But I'd say the last UCF football thing that made me like not even this happy, but this close to this level of happy was the Oklahoma State game. Before that, I don't even know the answer. Probably. That stretch in 2022 where I thought they were going to be really good.
Boise,
when they beat Cincy. Not even really Boise. I think I came away from that game like
them beating Cincy in 2022 was a big one because that was their first top 25 win in like 4 years. Cincy beat them 3 straight times, which has just become an insufferable thing.
That and the way the game played out, and then they went on. They beat Memphis. They beat Tulane. Like that stretch was probably the best stretch we've had in the last few years. Which, considering what happened after it, is really sad. But we talked about this a little bit earlier too, and this is kind of a 2-part from Z-Dad. Should we be concerned with the lack of sacks and also panic if no sacks against Colorado?
Yes, because Colorado's O-line is bad. So that is one of their...
That's actually a great point.
We'll get into that a lot more, obviously, in our preview pod, but Colorado has a couple key weaknesses that match up perfectly with what UCF is good at, and one of those is Colorado's O-line has been a problem for them, a big problem for them. And if they don't bring pressure, if they don't get any sacks, anything like that against that O-line, then I'm officially on freak out watch for the rest of the season.
Yep, I'll agree. Concerns with the pass defense with Shedeur coming to town.
But yes,
relatively. Yeah, I think so.
He's a very good quarterback, and I suspect that he's going to make me very upset for quite some time during the game.
You've already answered this, but how cool is it to have Olive Garden tweeting?
Probably one of the top 5 coolest things that's ever happened to me in my entire life is when Olive Garden tweets at me. Top 3? Top 4?
I would say something in response to that, but I am coming off of a night last night where I literally tweeted, the Rays were playing a meaningless game. They're not going to make the playoffs. And their young top prospect hit a home run. And I said I would consider it one of the top experiences of my life, seeing that with my own eyes. So I can't say anything in response to what you just said. All right. Those are the questions. There were 10 questions, but also 20 probably. And we appreciate you guys for supplying those for us. You gave me this idea, like we should do a bi-week podcast or bi-week mailbag this week for the podcast. I was like, cool, yeah, we'll talk TCU, and then we'll do the mailbag. And then I didn't think, okay, we're also going to have a 20-minute conversation about the space uniform. So that's the reason for the longer podcast. But we're also not having a post-game pod Saturday, so
it's a bi-week.
You're getting us for about the same amount of time anyway.
We poke some fun, but obviously, thank you all for your questions. We appreciate it. I always love when we get a mailbag. We get a lot of good responses. I'm sure we'll have another one at some point in the future. And hopefully we'll be talking about UCF being 9-0 or something and not how the season went off the rails and TCU was just one faint aberration and how we should have been more concerned about them going down 21-7 and not 28-7 and not coming back from that. But hopefully that's not what happens.
TCU being the last time UCF made us happy.
TCU ends up being like a 3-9 team.
Yeah. All right. Some football news. A lot of it comes from awards and recognition from the TCU game. KJ Jefferson was named a Manning Award Star of the Week, as well as being included in the Davey O'Brien Great 8 for Week 3. RJ Harvey was the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Week, in addition to being picked as the East-West Shrine Bowl's Offensive Breakout Player of the Week, which I feel like RJ Harvey broke out a while back, probably 2 years ago, but we love him getting more recognition now. Kirk Herbstreit also named him as one of his top or named UCF as one of his top performing teams of week 3, and RJ Harvey as one of his top performing players of week 3, as he does on his little graphics. I believe it's Sunday or Monday after the weekend. Kobe Hudson was named as the Senior Bowl's stock up offensive player of the week. So the 3 heroes from UCF's offense in that game getting a lot of recognition. And then on the Colorado game, the 6-day window was exercised for UCF Colorado as far as the TV time, the kickoff time and the TV channel, along with essentially the entire rest of the conference. I think they only picked one kickoff time out of the entire conference. And I get really annoyed when they do that because it impacts my plans.
We got to stop with the 6-day window stuff. I know that's just
like
a complaint because there's no way they can stop with it and they're not going to, but we got to stop.
Yeah, I hate it. But they're not going to stop. Game of the week, UCF women's soccer. They are into Big 12 play now. They have 2 games this week, but I'll pick the second one. UCF women's soccer is 3-1-2, 1-0-0 in the Big 12, and they host Arizona State on Sunday at noon. Arizona State's 0-1 in the Big 12, but they're 5-1-2 overall, so a solid team. UCF beat Houston, I think it was 5-0 in their Big 12 opener. So a great start, and hopefully they keep it going. Tweet of the week.
Tweet of the week. Tweet of the week is 2 things this week. It is 1, positive, and B, more a collective mood shift than a single tweet. I want to just shout out, as far as social media things, that one thing that I don't know if we fully talked enough about on our TCU postgame podcast was this was the game where the nation learned RJ Harvey. You talked about it with the awards he got this week. It was from the Big 12 tweeting about him to just random fans to national media members. It was like that was the game where everyone just collectively on social media went, hey, UCF's running back might be one of the best in the country. And I think it's cool that we're at the point now where he could win the Doak Walker Award. He could. I actually think he's seriously in that category where that might happen because what you need is hype, and he has that now. So I just want to give a shout out to RJ Harvey and his performance, and him finally, after 2 years of being awesome, finally having the nation notice him and how good he is. Yeah. I'm sure that's going to pay off as the season goes on.
Yeah, and I think for that by itself is great. I love it. Also, the fact that it's naturally going to lead to him being talked about more in NFL draft circles, and all the people who cover the draft year round and are paying attention to that stuff. You'll see him pop up more and more, and that's really good because I think he really has a future there, and I'm excited. I also forgot to mention this one, that he also won the Doak Walker Award for the National Running Back of the Week. So there was that one as well, which is a pretty big one.
Big deal.
Go on. You had a negative also one? Negative of the week?
No, that was it.
I thought you said you had 2 things.
Did I? I got 2 words for you.
Yeah, no, I'm confused. I don't know.
I do not think I said. All right, we'll have to listen back. I think I said that was it. Okay. Well, I may have just pulled a Charles Barkley. We'll have to see.
Well, now I'm gaslighting myself into thinking I'm wrong, but whatever.
I've got 2 words for you. UCF's space uniforms. Excellent.
Yep. Must see TV. Cool. All right. I was prepared for another thing, and I literally threw it back to you, and you just looked at me like, what?
I'm waiting for. I've never been sitting here waiting for you to end the podcast, and as you look at me, and I'm waiting for the outro, and you go on. I'm like, with what?
Just say more things and make this podcast even longer, please. Yeah, we'll get out of here. We'll be back not this week because there is not a game this week. So enjoy your week, enjoy your weekends, your Saturdays, your Sundays. A lot of football that I will still be watching. We'll be back next week to preview the Colorado game for episode 228. Until then, you can find us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at @ByCASimmons, at Night Sports Now, and at Pegasus Podcast. Thank you guys so much for being with us, and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye, everybody.